and welcome to another edition of This Week in Cleantech, a roundup of the week's biggest stories you need to know in climate and clean energy in 15 minutes or less. Today is Friday, September 8th, 2023. I'm Renewable Energy World Senior Content Director John Engel. Casey Crownhart from MIT Tech Review will be joining us shortly. But for now, I'm joined by PR, climate tech, clean tech veteran Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Hey, Mike.
Hello, Mr. Engel. Did you know that Suncast Nico Johnson had the audacity to make fun of you for wearing a gray shirt in order to match mine in the last episode? I want you to know that I defended your right to choose to be my twin. And I want you to know that going into RE Plus next week.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And since Nico's a friend, I will say, he needs to mind his own business and stick to his own podcast.
We're going to have words. Right? We're going to have words for him at RE
We're
Plus,
coming for
man.
You. Yeah.
All right.
Good point. All right. Well, remember, we want you to be part of the show as well. So nominate the stories that caught your eye each week by emailing us at thisweekincleantech@tigercomm.us. You can also send your T-shirt comments there. I'll take a look. We'll have a link in the episode description as well. Okay, Mike, let's get into it.
All right, story number one. We have a story written by The Guardian's Peter Stone entitled Texas Fracking Billionaire Brothers Fuel Right-Wing Media with Millions of Dollars. John, you have done a little bit of reporting in Texas in your time. What'd you think of this?
Yeah, I did. I covered Texas politics in Austin in a previous life, and the power of oil and gas billionaires like the Wilkes brothers, as well as Tim Dunn, that's another name, is well known, but I don't think it's always well understood. So there is no cap on contributions to state lawmakers in Texas. And as you can imagine, that presents a number of challenges. But these billionaires are sending six-figure, seven-figure checks to almost everyone in the Conservative Party to try to influence these decisions, and they do so behind the scenes. You rarely see interviews of these people. You don't necessarily know which organizations they're supporting unless you do some digging. And I think this story does a really great job of showcasing that incumbents are not just sitting idly by as they're losing market share.
Yeah, I think this story is important because by and large, people in this sector really haven't made their peace with the reality that we are not a new industry. In most cases, we're a new sector within an industry that's dominated by powerful incumbents that are not going to just hand over market share. We are a disruptive threat to an industry with decades of experience in weaponizing government influence and propaganda to manage market threats. So, for roughly a decade, the fixation was on the Koch brothers, and rightly so. But this story puts a spotlight on a different pair of brothers, the Wilkes brothers, and they've got lots to spend and lots to lose. They are not going to watch passively as we shutter their source of income. And my fear is really that clean economy isn't close to being ready to handle the reaction of those that we're disrupting. We've got a very interesting interview we're about to publish with EDP's Tom Stars. He's the longest tenured government affairs lead in the clean economy, and I encourage people to listen to that. John, what's our second story?
Yeah, this is from Sarah DiNatale from the San Antonio Express News, titled Batteries Helped Keep Texas Grid Afloat, but Operators Worry ERCOT Rules Could Chill the Industry. What'd you think, Mike?
Here we go with more Texas, I guess. This is a Texas-heavy episode, but the bummer here is that the state that's driven a lot of clean energy adoption is its policymakers have yet to right-size their relationship to the truth. When Renewable staved off collapse of the ERCOT power supplies a few years ago, state policymakers' reaction was to blame renewables and to push off all the non-Texans off the ERCOT board. Greg Abbott escaped blame and Ted Cruz escaped to Mexico, but the problem remains. So here we go again. ERCOT's pushing regulations that battery operators, I think, fear will hinder the growth of battery storage projects, which is going to be crucial for acting as a pacemaker to the grid. And it creates a reliability problem where one doesn't exist in the midst of the hottest year we've ever had in human history.
Yeah, I was there for Uri, the 2021 freeze, and I think that while Texas has made every attempt to limit, or at least policymakers, to limit clean energy deployment, I'm not sure that that is necessarily the case here. I think this goes back to regulators and grid operators still not really understanding what to do with all this storage, how it should participate in the markets, what value we can give to it, given that it doesn't fit neatly into those buckets of generator or load. It plays on both sides. So I think we're seeing regulators all over the country really trying to grapple with what to do with these assets. And I hope that ERCOT doesn't go in a direction to require all batteries to have 2 hours of charge at all times, because that's just simply not how markets function. Mike, what's our next one?
Story number 3 is one by Susan Montoya Bryan from the Associated Press. She reported, powered by wind, this $10 billion transmission line will carry more energy than the Hoover Dam. It's discussing this fascinating pattern energy project, Sunxia transmission line in New Mexico. John, what do you think of this?
Well, I think it took 12 years to get to this point, so that's pretty crazy. And I want to share this quick little story that I saw someone report, or one of the trade groups mentioned, maybe it was SIA, that John Podesta was working as the chief of staff in the Obama White House and first became acquainted with this project, came back with the Biden administration to implement the IRA, and was shocked to see that it was still waiting to get to the point of breaking ground. So I think that's just really a testament to how crucial it is that we address permitting reform to achieve any of these goals that we have, because we won't get there.
I think permitting might be the toughest immediate barrier to the clean energy transition, but I got to think that transmission is the toughest long-term barrier. This project is very large. It delivers power over 550 miles from central New Mexico to places in Arizona and California, delivering power to 3 million people in parts of the West. So it's going to take us a step closer to getting transmission built like we need. But boy, golly, we've got to get quicker about building these things if we're going to get the clean energy transition to where it needs to go. John, what's our first story?
Yeah, this is from Ben Gieman from Axios. White House launches billion-dollar effort to speed EV production. What'd you take away from this one?
I think this is fascinating. So the White House is prioritizing projects that drive the shift from internal combustion engines to EVs, and there are benefits to American workers and helping us cut carbon pollution as well. But it's taking place in the middle of a UAW automakers contract negotiation, which is largely centered on the question of what EVs is going to do to the automaker workforce. The White House is clearly trying to ease tensions between government goals and industry interests. The question is, where does that put workers? And I think if they're successful here, we're going to balance between labor and eco-friendly transportation goals. John, what do you think?
Yeah, this is another example of the juggling act that the White House is having to do as President Biden runs on a climate and clean energy agenda. We've talked about it before, but domestic manufacturing, trade issues, high quality jobs, it's all very important to him also. So finding this middle ground where we can achieve, both sets of goals is critical. And we saw it play out with the Commerce Department's ruling on Chinese solar imports. Like there's a lot of different interests to balance here. And I think that this is really showcasing that the energy transition does have growing pains, but we need to push it along, and we need to give it as much support as we can. Mike, what's our last one?
Number 5 is an MIT Tech Review story by Casey Crownhart. Zinc batteries that offer an alternative to lithium just got a big boost. It's about how Eos Energy, a company that provides zinc halide batteries, just got a $400 million loan guarantee from the DOE. John, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's been a long road for that company. They've been working on this for more than a decade. And, the support from Jigar Shah's Loan Programs Office is certainly a monumental step. We know that we need better diversity in our energy storage resources. And I think, lithium-ion alternatives could serve an important role in different applications than we're using lithium-ion today. It's a lot of money, $400 million for a bit of a bet. So it seems a little riskier than the LPO has tended to go with, at least so far since the IRA. But I think it's worth doing, and it's great to see that we're going to try difficult things, and we need to be able to shoulder some of that risk in order to do so.
I had a client once describe the battery storage as being in a state of beautiful chaos, meaning it was fascinating to see how capitalism would produce competing approaches to a problem and let the market sort it out. Now, of course, we know that energy is anything but a free market. Government has a hand in it because it's so essential to the economy. But I would point out that the loan guarantee program is supposed to fund the stuff that private markets will not loan money to because it has too high a risk. And so to me, here we go with zinc-based batteries. They have lower cost, but less efficiency than traditional lithium batteries. there are issues with unwanted chemical reactions. And yet I think we've got to diversify the pool of technologies that we're trying out for different storage applications. And so I think this loan guarantee is really a welcome development. I'm fascinated by this entire sector, and I'm going to be interested to see how this all plays out. And we have Casey now to join us to talk about her story. And Casey Crownhart's joining us. Hey, Casey, thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. What's the big takeaway our listeners should have on this story?
Yeah, so this is the biggest support, the only support that the Department of Energy's Loan Programs Office has ever given to an alternative battery company. So I think this is really big news for people who are hoping to see more options to store clean energy on the grid.
Casey, you mentioned that there's still some challenges ahead, some of them technical that Eos and others think they can address, but the other being access to capital, which clearly they've addressed through this loan commitment. But what about breaking this trend that we've seen of alternative battery makers going under because they can't get market acceptance and they can't find that customer that sees the value here beyond a lithium ion and the different applications? Do you get any grasp for what Eos wants to do differently or plans to circumvent that?
Yeah, I mean, part of it that a lot of people are saying now is that the timing is just a lot better. You know, we have a lot more renewables on the grid, so I think people are really looking for any option to store energy. And also, you know, having material shortages or kind of concerns about that, questions about where we're going to get all the lithium, where we're going to get all the nickel for lithium ion cells are very much more top of mind. Eos has also said that, you know, they're planning to kind of build their manufacturing as they get the demand. You know, you saw a lot of battery companies in Cleantech 1.0 build gigantic factories, and then they didn't have anybody to build batteries for. So that's kind of also Eos's answer to part of that question.
Casey, do you get the sense that there was this de facto verdict that emerged, I think, in the last 18 months that lithium had kind of won the storage race? Does this reset that verdict a little bit or a lot?
Ooh, I guess to me, I don't know that verdict ever really cleared, at least for part of the clean tech community. I do think people are seeing this as a big point in favor of kind of lithium alternatives. But I think it'll really come down to seeing these projects getting deployed. You know, getting capital is a huge barrier, but I think it'll really take getting these batteries out and working and storing renewable energy to kind of fully reset that verdict.
Probably got time for one more, Casey, but what is the Eos plan to scale then? As they're going step by step, how quickly do they think that they can get to market and really capitalize on the opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it'll take, I think, a couple of years for them to be fully up to scale. But like I said, it's kind of that step-by-step sort of process. So it'll be really interesting to see how quickly they can fill orders and how quickly they can build out those automated manufacturing lines that they're trying to build.
Well, John, we're about out of time. I want to give a shout out to our terrific producer, Brian Mendez, and to Alex Peterson and Claire Quirin for helping us select this week's stories.
Yeah, and thank you, Casey Crownhart, for joining us on this episode of This Week in Clean Tech. Please make sure you subscribe, give us feedback, and share those story recommendations. You can also read all of the articles we discussed this week by clicking the links in the episode description. And as you're making your trip to RE+, which I know many of you are, by the time you're listening to this, make sure to tune into Monday's episode of Factor This. We had a really interesting conversation with Plug Power CEO Andy Marsh about this battle over green hydrogen incentives. You'll want to check that out. All right, Mike, see you next time.
I'll see you next week, my friend. We're going to try to do this show from the show floor, I think. So we're going to see if we can pull that one off. Casey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me all.
Take care.
Bye.